Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to RabbiForMe.org. Thanks for coming. There's a lot going on now in the world, but I wanted to start with a story that's just breaking out now. We still don't know all the details. It started on Friday with an organization that has been matching soldiers that are fighting in Israel with yeshiva students that are studying while the war goes on in Israel. This is a way that the yeshiva boys, while they're not actually on the field fighting, but they can still be part of the efforts to ensure security to the entire state of Israel, and for that matter to Gaza also, because they need Israel to help them out a little bit too. The way that this program works is that they go to different yeshivas. Some yeshivas have 20, 30 students. Some yeshivas have 300, 400. And each battalion and the soldiers in a battalion will be matched up with yeshiva students from a certain yeshiva. And they're very specific. One yeshiva boy, his learning is in the merit of and for the protection of a certain soldier that's fighting on the field. And that's how things have been going. This is the first time I heard about it, but it's really a fabulous idea. What happened is this past week, I heard this on Friday, it started coming out, we didn't have the full story then. There was a certain commander who was in contact with the Rosh Yeshiva, with the dean of the yeshiva, one of the yeshivas participating in this program, and he had at the end of the day, the Rosh Yeshiva called up the commander and said, "Well, how is your battalion doing?" The commander responded, "Well, thank God, miraculously, everybody's alive. However, even though most of the soldiers came out not without any injuries either, there is one soldier that got significant injuries in that day's work." The Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Wolshansky, this is the yeshiva in Tzfas, in Safed, in northern Israel, he looked at his list of the yeshiva boys that were learning, which yeshiva student was learning in the merit of that wounded soldier, and lo and behold, it was the only yeshiva student in the entire yeshiva that slept through the morning period. I kid you not, this is a real story. It happened. Obviously, the Rosh Yeshiva was shaken up just like I'm shaken up. He called over the yeshiva boy and he showed him the paper. He said, "Do you realize that you are the only one that slept in today? And of the entire battalion, the one soldier that was injured is the soldier that you were learning, in whose merit you were learning." The yeshiva boy was completely freaked out. That's the right word. I could use a lighter term. He was freaked out. He had a complete turnaround. This boy was learning in the yeshiva non-stop the entire day. Towards Shabbos, at the end of the day, Rabbi Wolshansky called up the commander again to inquire about the status of this wounded soldier. The commander did respond that indeed this soldier that was in the hospital, although he had significant injuries from the day before, he was already showing significant improvements. Let's take it from this story and zoom out a little bit. This past week, we've seen the entire world in topsy-turvy. Chaos. And I've identified 4 major crises that have been going on that are most relevant to everybody here in our Cloud Synagogue. Number 1, we have obviously a battle going on in Israel. It's now the 21st day of this battle between Israel and Hamas. You also have the Ukrainian crisis, Ukraine and Russia, which has intensified last week when a commercial airliner was shot down with a Russian missile. We also have the ISIS crisis, which is not running away. It's just going to come back and bite us unless we actually take care of it. And then number 4, we have a little bit more locally a national crisis, this border crisis. Reports are saying that by the end of 2014, in this year alone, 90,000 unaccompanied minors, yes, that's children under 18, and I think that most of them are even under 15 and 14, 90,000 illegal immigrants in 1 year that will have crossed our border unaccompanied. Most of them, the little ones, children as young as 5 years old, they don't even know their names. They don't know their last names. They don't know which towns they came from. They'll never be able to find their parents. It's a major humanitarian crisis, which obviously the humanitarian crisis, while it's very important, but it's only secondary to the crisis that was actually caused by some legislation a couple of years ago. Again, let's try to put everything together. All these 4 major crises, I noticed that they have one thing in common. Every single one of these crises, these 4 major crises, you can trace back to border problems. Every single one of them. Let's go. We'll go through each one right now. Number 1, Israel and Gaza. If you remember, just 2 months ago, the entire world was waiting for the Israel-Palestinian reconciliation peace process, and finally for it to bear some fruit. It seemed like it was going nowhere for 9 months with our Secretary of State. Shortly thereafter, this rocket barrage started from Gaza. Now let's just remind everyone, there were heavy debates 9 years ago. I remember them clearly, whether to disengage from Gaza. Now, everybody was saying, the entire world was promising, Gaza, if you'd only give them a little bit of land, they'll turn it into the Singapore of the Middle East. And if there's peace, who cares about the borders? Israel doesn't need that little piece of land with 1.7 million Arabs. There's nothing in it for them, and just disengage from it. The border doesn't really make that much of a difference. This war right now is the strongest testimony that, yes, borders make a difference. The tunnels would not be there, would not be happening if Israel did not remove their borders. The rocket barrage would not happen if they kept those borders. And this also will hopefully bolster the truth that giving up the West Bank, the so-called West Bank, Yehuda v'Shomron, Judah and Samaria, is also a catastrophic mistake. Israel needs borders, and those are important. That is also underscored by the next crisis that's going on. We'll skip to the ISIS crisis, because that's especially relevant to the borders of Israel. ISIS, they just completely demolished the borders between Iraq, Syria. Their next stop is Jordan, and then they're following on to the Levant, in other words, to Israel. The border at the Jordan River is crucial to keeping Israel a safe state. Let's go on. Number 3, borders. Ukrainian crisis. That is also an issue of borders. Obviously, Mr. Putin wants his borders to expand all the way to Europe and probably eventually to the whole world. But again, they're fighting over borders. And then when you come back to our national crisis, obviously, the border crisis is a crisis of the border. Now, taking a little lesson from this story that just broke out in Israel of the soldiers, you see the reality. This is the messianic reality coming to fruition, that learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, yes, it in a very real way protects and sustains our soldiers. And imagine what it does for the person learning the Torah and the person doing the mitzvahs, not just the one that he's doing it on behalf of. The lesson that we need to take out over here is that everything over here is about borders. In the 21st century, borders in a personal sense, meaning moral borders, what is okay for me to do, what is not okay for me to do. Borders, clothing borders. When do I expose myself? When do I conceal myself? Where am I just exposed? Is everything okay? Are there any borders? Do I have any boundaries that this is okay and beyond that is not okay? The lesson that I think we need to take, all of us sitting here in America, far away from most of these problems, even over here we're far from Texas. I heard that yesterday the governor of the mayor of Chicago just invited 1,000 of these illegal immigrants to join Chicago. It's about borders. We're far away, but these problems eventually will come home. The way that we can contribute to the security of Israel, and for that matter, we want Iraq to be secure also. We want everybody there to be well. We don't want them, Ukraine, Russia, and over at home here in America, strong borders start with our own borders. I'm suggesting to everybody watching here to do something to move your borders out a little bit as far as what you'll do, what you know is right, the things that are right, and push yourself to those borders. And at the same time, to strengthen the borders of what's not okay. I'm right here, we have exactly 1 minute left. I'm taking a resolution right now that until this war is over in Israel, I'm going to spend nothing major. I'm not making any huge commitments. It's only until the war is over, and only 5 minutes a night before I go to bed, I'm going to have an extra 5 minutes to learn Torah in the merit of all of the soldiers. I haven't been privileged to be part of this specific program matching up, but you know what? Maybe I'll even get involved in that too. Everyone have a wonderful week, and hope to see you next time.